I knew her coffee order, double Americano, no sugar, never from the machine on the 4th floor. Her preferred seat on every flight. And the exact moment she stopped needing me to brief her and started needing me to just stay quiet while she thought. That was the job. Anticipate. Don't hover. Be useful before she had to ask. Her name was Sylvia Marsh, and she ran the Western Operations Division of a mid-sized resource consulting firm out of Calgary, like she had somewhere more important to be. 41, maybe 42. I never asked. Sharp enough that people straightened up when she stepped off the elevator. She'd built her reputation over 15 years of not flinching, and in the 9 months I'd worked as her field coordinator, I'd seen her back down from exactly nothing. I was 28. She was my direct supervisor. Those were the boundaries, and I understood them. That Tuesday in late October, we were flying a company charter from Calgary up to a remote site consultation near the Yukon border. 2 days, 3 client meetings, then back. The kind of trip that looks like adventure until you're the one who preloaded every file, confirmed every ground vehicle, and triple-checked the weather window the night before. She was sitting across from me in the small cabin, reviewing a resource assessment I'd formatted at 1 in the morning, reading with that focused stillness she had, like the rest of the world was simply on mute. The projection table on page 9, she said without looking up. The column headers are cut off. I had my laptop open before she finished the sentence. The PDF rendered differently than the source. I have the clean version. You sent me this version. I sent you 3 versions. The one named Marsh NW Final Rev is current. She looked at me then, not angry, just already past the point of patience. There should not be 3 versions. He understood. That was her. She could make you feel like you were still learning to walk, from inside a perfectly functioning aircraft at 30,000 feet over northern British Columbia. I closed the column gap in the file and resent it without another word. The pilot's voice came over the speaker, maybe 20 minutes later. Light turbulence expected. Nothing unusual. Sylvia didn't react. She asked me to pull up the client intake notes from the Whitehorse team, and I had them open before she looked up. Then, the aircraft dropped. Not a dip, not a pocket of rough air. A real drop, sudden and hollow, the kind that lifts your stomach straight out of your body. My laptop slid sideways. A water bottle rolled off the small console and hit the floor. Across from me, Sylvia's hand shot to the armrest. I watched her knuckles go white, and that alone told me more than the turbulence did. Cabin lights flickered. Twice. What was that? I said. She answered the way she answered everything. Stay seated. Another drop came, harder. The aircraft shuddered sideways, and then something else. A sound from the front that didn't belong. Uneven, rough, like something working against itself. The pilot's voice came back, and this time the smooth, professional tone was completely gone. We have a systems issue. I need you both to remain seated and strapped in. We were. I looked out the window. No city lights, no road grid, no runway. Just the darkening ridgeline of the northern interior. Spruce, rock, and the flat gray blue of a lake somewhere below us catching the last of the afternoon light. Sylvia's chin lifted. We're not near the site. No, I said. Or anywhere with a runway. Shh, no. The engine noise changed again. Uneven now. Cycling like something trying very hard to hold itself together. I heard Sylvia draw one slow breath through her nose. She looked across the cabin at me, and for the first time in 9 months, I saw something behind her expression that wasn't authority. The emergency kit, she said. Quiet, controlled, not a question. You, now? Yes. I reached behind my seat, found the kit in the rear storage compartment, and had barely pulled it free when the nose angled down and the whole world went sideways. I hit the cabinet with my shoulder, hard. Papers scattered. The window on the left side fractured into a white starburst pattern. Sylvia said something. I heard the shape of it, but not the words. Then the pilot shouted, "Brace." The landing was not a landing. It was a series of impacts. The first bounced me against my belt hard enough to knock the air out of me. The second was all sound, a tearing metallic shriek that went on too long, and then a third, slower impact that spun us and stopped everything so completely. My ears rang for several seconds before I could hear anything else. Smoke, thin at first, coming from the front. I got my belt off on the 3rd try. My left knee had taken something during the last impact, and it wasn't happy about weight. I pushed into the aisle anyway. Sylvia was still in her seat, belt engaged, eyes open but not tracking. I put my hand on her shoulder. Sylvia. Nothing. Sylvia. She blinked, hard, and took a breath that sounded like she was remembering how. Then she tried to sit up straight, immediate, automatic, like her body defaulted to posture before pain. Then the pain caught up. Her hand moved to her left side. Don't move fast, I said. She moved my hand off her without looking at me. Check the pilot. Of course. Even in a ditch, 900 kilometers from Calgary, she was still running the checklist. I pushed toward the cockpit. The door was jammed at an angle, smoke thicker near the front. I called out twice. No answer came back. I could see enough through the gap to understand what that meant. I backed away. Sylvia had gotten herself loose and was standing with one hand braced against the seat, breathing in short, measured intervals. She looked at me. Well, he's not going to be able to help us. Something moved through her face. It lasted less than a second. Then she locked it back down. Fine, what do we have? The question shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. We had smoke, torn leather, a busted overhead panel, trees pressing in on all three visible sides, and two people running purely on adrenaline. But she was asking me for an inventory, so I started one. Water, 2 bottles, a thin emergency kit, 2 blankets from the storage compartment, 1 flashlight, my bag, her bag, a box of sealed granola bars someone had shoved behind the rear seats. I grabbed everything I could reach and piled it in the aisle. She tried to lift one of the hard-shell cases from the floor rack. I watched her almost buckle. Leave it, I said. I said to grab everything useful. I said leave it. Her eyes came up to mine, sharp, unhappy, still fully herself. You don't speak to me that way. Smoke was curling lower through the cabin. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. Be angry later. Right now we go. She didn't answer me. But she also didn't reach for the case again. Yacht out through a split in the fuselage into cold air, mud, and a landscape that looked nothing like the world we'd left 4 hours ago. Northern BC probably, maybe Yukon. No road, no structure, no signal on my phone when I checked. The aircraft was half buried in a hillside, spruce boughs pressing in from 3 sides, a thin line of smoke rising from the nose. Sylvia took 3 steps from the wreck and stopped, one arm wrapped around her ribs. She stared at the tree line, set the bags down, looked around, really looked. Someone will come, she said. Not asking, more like deciding. Maybe. Maybe not. The transponder may have triggered, or may not have. Either way, they know we were on this flight plan. She turned toward me at that, and, for a moment, she looked like she was about to correct my tone again. Instead, she just looked at the smoke, still rising from what was left of the charter. So we wait, she said. We wait smart, I said. Sun goes down in less than 2 hours up here this time of year. That shut down any more debate. The first hour was ugly, practical work. No drama, just the kind of tired, shaking, post-adrenaline effort that makes your hands feel like they belong to someone else. I moved the supplies away from the aircraft, found higher ground about 40 meters uphill where the trees thinned but still gave cover. Sylvia tried to help carry and winced every time she bent. I stopped asking her to. The cut near her temple was slow bleeding, bruising across her ribs, probably one cracked, maybe more. My knee had swollen enough that my boot felt tight. My left shoulder felt like I'd taken a swing from a 2x4. I didn't say any of that out loud because it didn't change anything. When she finally sat down on the thermal blanket I'd spread on the driest patch of ground I could find, she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen from her in 9 months of working closely beside her. How bad? She said. Not vain, not complaining. A factual query, same register she used before presentations when she wanted the unfiltered version. Like you were in a plane crash, I said. Something moved at the corner of her mouth. It might have been the beginning of a laugh. Then her ribs reminded her not to, and she pressed her hand flat against her side. Sit down, I said. I'm fine. You're not. She looked at me for a full 3 seconds. Then she lowered herself onto the blanket, like each centimeter had to be individually approved. That was the first real concession I'd ever seen her make to anything. The emergency kit was basic. Bandages, antiseptic, 4 tablets of ibuprofen, a foil thermal sheet gauze, made for the idea of an emergency, not the specifics of one. I crouched in front of her with an antiseptic wipe. You. This will sting. Dear, just do it. Dear. I cleaned the cut at her hairline, while she stared over my shoulder at the middle distance, and didn't move except for her fingers pressing down harder on the blanket. Up close, without the office lighting and the controlled composure she wore like a second blazer, she looked different. Not weaker, just actual. Like I was seeing the version of her that existed before 15 years of not flinching had been applied. Ribs could be cracked, I said. Not necessarily broken, but if it gets harder to breathe, tell me. I know how the human body works. Great, I said, then we're both caught up. She gave me a look, offended but present, more present actually than I'd seen her in months. By late afternoon, I'd done 2 more trips back to the wreck. Found 1 extra flashlight, a seat cushion that could double as insulation, a canvas bag with a few documents and, inexplicably, a small bag of roasted almonds from someone's carry-on that had wedged itself under the rear seat. I also found her leather boots in the mud outside the fuselage, where a bag had split on impact. Expensive. Completely wrong for where we were. I carried them back anyway. When I held them up without a word, she looked at them, then at me. Don't. I didn't say anything. You. We're about to. I was thinking it, I admitted. She leaned back against the tree she'd positioned herself next to and closed her eyes for a moment. I had a site review in Watson Lake Thursday. Car booked. Hotel under a subsidiary name so the regional media wouldn't pick it up. She paused. I had a schedule. I set the boots down. Now you have hiking boots from someone else's emergency bag. She looked down at the mismatched runners she'd already changed into from the storage compartment bag. Didn't say anything. That silence held more than any complaint would have. I managed a rough shelter by the time the light started dropping. Blanket over a low branch, torn seat fabric weighted with rocks on 2 sides, a windbreak made from the densest spruce boughs I could cut, with the serrated edge of the flashlight casing. It looked like something a 12-year-old had built after watching one survival video. But it blocked wind, and it was something. Sylvia watched me work for a while, then said, "You've done this before?" And no. Then how are you doing it? I'm just choosing the least bad option every time I have to choose. He pulled the thermal sheet tighter around her shoulders. That is not reassuring. It's all I've got right now. We split the first granola bar between us and made ourselves drink water slowly, which was harder than it sounds when your body is screaming at you. The quiet settled in fast after that. A northern October night is not peaceful. It's loud in a way that's personal. Insects in the brush, wind shifting through the spruce, sounds you can't place and don't want to. The smoke from the aircraft still visible in a thin gray thread against the darkening sky. Keep thinking I hear a helicopter, she said. Here. I was sitting near the shelter entrance with the flashlight off. Me too. You. Don't have to say that. I'm not just saying it. She was quiet a moment, then quieter. Do you think they know where we came down? I thought about it honestly. They know we disappeared. The flight plan was filed. The timeline they'll work from is tight. That's not an answer. It's the most accurate one I have. She pulled her knees up, winced, and lowered them again. I moved toward her without deciding to. Easy. Dear, I am not fragile. I know, I said. You're injured. Those are different. She turned her face toward me in the dark. For a second I thought she was going to cut me down. Instead she said, almost flat, I hate this. Dear, I waited. I hate not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. She stopped. I hate that I can't stand up without calculating it first. Another pause. I hate needing someone. That last one came out quieter than the rest. I sat beside her, close enough to matter, far enough to leave her dignity intact. Then be angry at it. Just don't burn energy pretending you're fine when you're not. She looked at me for a long moment. You're different out here. Same person. No, she said. In the office you apologized before you disagreed with me. Yeah, I said. That version of the job doesn't exist anymore. It ended when we hit the ground. Something shifted in her expression. Small, tired, real. Around midnight the weather changed. I felt it first in the wind, a different weight to it, coming from the northwest. Then colder. Then rain, sudden and hard, the way northern storms announce themselves when they've decided not to wait. The shelter went in the first serious gust. One of the branch supports tore out, the blanket snapped sideways, and rain drove straight through before I could get a hand on the loose edge. I shouted over the noise. You grabbed the corner. She was already moving. She caught it, but the second gust tore the whole windbreak out and dumped cold rain over both of us. The seat cushion went. One of the water bottles rolled into the mud. We stood there for a moment in the rain looking at what was left. Then Sylvia said, in a voice I had not heard from her before, raw, stripped of everything polished, "You said this would hold." I said it was better than nothing. Apparently not by much. I almost went back at her. I almost told her she could build the next one. But she was shaking, not from cold alone, with one arm locked around her ribs and rain running in lines down her face. So I didn't. Come on, I said. We move. To where? There's a rock shelf uphill. I saw it earlier. 20 minutes. She didn't argue. We pushed uphill through dark and mud and branches, both carrying what we could, neither speaking. By the time we found the shelf, a slab of granite that curved out just enough to give us an overhang, we were soaked through, and my knee was making its displeasure loudly known. But the stone kept the worst of the rain off. I found the driest patch under the overhang, spread the surviving blanket, and sat down. Sylvia lowered herself beside me, and for once didn't perform being fine. Her teeth were chattering. I looked at her wet clothes, at my own, at the temperature that was only going to drop before it rose. We need to stay warm, I said. She understood right away. I saw it, the hesitation, the pride, the math winning out over both. After a second, she gave a short nod. So, I sat close, pulled the blanket around both of us, and she leaned into me, because the alternative was hypothermia. Her shoulder against my arm. Both of us watching the rain hit the rock 3 feet in front of us. She was quiet for a long time. This is not how this ends, she said finally. I pulled the blanket tighter. No. You don't sound certain. I'm not certain about most things right now, I said honestly. She leaned slightly more into me. Neither of us said anything else for a while, but we both knew something was different. The easy version of this had ended with the shelter. Whatever got us through the next 2 days was going to be closer to the bone. Morning came gray and cold and damp. The storm had cleared but left everything worse. Our clothes were still heavy with rain. The supplies looked smaller in daylight. We ate half a granola bar each in silence, splitting the remaining almonds into 2 careful piles like they were negotiating something. Sylvia sat with her back against the rock, both hands around the water bottle, taking slow sips. She looked nothing like the person who ran regional ops meetings with 30 people too nervous to look at their phones. Not diminished, just present in a way that didn't require any performance. Can't stay here, I said. She nodded once. No resistance. That alone said more than any conversation. We spent the morning making slow trips back to the wreck for anything that had survived the night. A seat cover that could keep things dry. A metal serving tray. 1 more sealed pack of crackers from the galley compartment. Sylvia moved slower than me, but she kept moving, and every time her ribs made her jaw tighten, and she saw me notice, she looked away. By midday the cold was gone and the damp had turned into real heat. The kind that coats everything and pulls the energy right out of you. Our water was close to gone. That changed the mood immediately. There has to be water somewhere below us, I said, looking at the slope. Lower ground, probably north. You're guessing. Yes. She pushed herself upright from the rock, tested her weight, adjusted. Then we stay together. If one of us gets turned around separately, that's worse than going slow. I looked at her. I can move faster alone and come back. I'm not staying here by myself. No command in it. No edge. Just the flat sound of someone admitting something they didn't want to. How long? 2 hours. Maybe less. That's not a specific answer. It's the honest one. She held my eyes for a moment, jaw set. Then she said, quieter, take the flashlight. It's daytime. Take it. So I took it. Before I left, I showed her exactly where the bandages were, where the extra water foil was, which direction I'd be heading, where I'd leave cloth markers on branches. I talked longer than the information required. Something in her face made it hard to turn and walk away. I'll be back before it gets dark, I said. Don't be stupid out there, she said. You, too. I headed north and downhill, listening through the brush for anything that sounded like moving water. At first there was nothing but the insects and my own breathing. Then birds. Then more nothing. Just the hot, still air, and the ache in my knee every time I stepped on uneven ground. I found a muddy gully about 40 minutes out. Shallow, no flow. Kept going. The heat got heavier. My shoulder throbbed. Twice I thought I heard water, and it turned out to be wind. The third time, faint and steady, I heard it. An actual trickle, somewhere ahead through a stand of birch. I pushed through and found a narrow creek, maybe 6 inches deep, running between moss-covered rocks, cold, clean, moving. I actually said something out loud that I won't repeat, and then crouched at the edge and figured out how to carry as much as I could back without losing time. When I turned around, the sun had moved further than I wanted. I moved faster on the way back and paid for it. Slipped on a wet slope, caught my bad knee on a root, lost the thread of my markers near a deadfall, and had to backtrack. Every minute I lost, I thought about her sitting under that rock shelf listening for me, watching the tree line. When I came through the brush into camp, she was on her feet before I'd said a word. She looked, I don't have a better way to put it, like she'd been holding herself together with both hands for longer than she should have had to. Pale. Eyes wide in a way I'd never seen from her in all the time I'd worked beside her. For a second she didn't move. Then she came straight to me. Where were you? Not a question, a statement. I found water. She looked at the bottle and the tray. Then she looked at me, and whatever she'd been running on since I left just dissolved. She grabbed my jacket with both hands and pressed her face against my chest. I stood there for half a second, then put my arms around her. It was shaking. Deep, sustained shaking, not cold. The kind that comes after you've already lived inside the worst version of what might happen and can't get back out of it. I thought you weren't coming back, she said into my jacket. I'm here. You were gone too long. I know. You don't get to do that again. Her voice was tight and low and completely unguarded. Something shifted in me at that. Or maybe it had been shifting since the shelter collapsed, and I'd just been too focused on staying alive to notice. I pulled back enough to look at her. There was mud on her cheek, the bandage near her hairline was loose, her hair was a mess, and she clearly didn't care. And she was looking at me with something that had no professional filter on it at all. I didn't schedule it, I said. A broken sound came out of her, not quite a laugh, not quite not. And then she was crying, not loudly, just silent tears, which she clearly hated, turning away immediately to wipe at her face. Don't, I said. Don't what? Pretend I didn't see it. She stood with her back to me for a moment, shoulders up. Then she said, quiet and flat, in the office, if anyone ever saw me like that, I would not recover from it. We're not in the office. No, she said, we really aren't. I gave her the water first. She drank, made herself stop, handed it back. We sat under the rock shelf while the afternoon went long and gold around us, and neither of us rushed the silence. When dark came, she moved close under the blanket before I said anything. Her head found my shoulder. Outside, the tree line was a black edge against a sky full of stars you never get to see in Calgary. After a long, quiet. She said, do you know what I kept thinking while you were gone? Tell me. That if you didn't come back, nothing else mattered. A pause. Not the Watson Lake review, not the Q4 budget cycle, not the Athabasca file I've been working on for 8 months. Another pause, slower. None of it. I turned slightly toward her. She was still looking at the stars like it was easier that way. And that scared me more than being out here, she said. My hand found hers under the blanket. She didn't move away. When she turned to look at me, there was nothing left between us that was professional or cautious or careful. Just two people who had been alone together in the worst version of things, for long enough that pretending didn't work anymore. She kissed me, not planned, not careful, like she'd made a decision and stopped waiting to make it. I kissed her back. Was it real or was it the fear talking? Leave me a comment. I want to know what you think. The night, the cold, the water run, the hours of not knowing. It all compressed into that moment where neither of us was pretending to be what we were at work. Under the granite shelf with the stars above the tree line and the creek sound somewhere below us, It felt like the most honest thing either of us had done in years. Rescue found us the next afternoon. Sylvia heard it first. She lifted her head and said, "Listen." At first I thought it was wind. Then I heard it. Rotor blades, somewhere above the tree line. We both stood too fast, and she grabbed my arm to catch herself, and then we were out in the open, both of us waving and shouting at a sky that suddenly had a helicopter in it. First pass missed us. Second pass, I held the foil from the emergency kit up into the light, and it banked hard and came around again. The noise became everything. Wind, rotors, men in rescue gear coming through the brush calling out, checking us over, asking questions neither of us could answer cleanly, because neither of us could get our thoughts fully organized. A Parks Canada search and rescue team out of Fort Nelson, as it turned out. They'd triangulated the last known position from the flight plan and the ELT, which had triggered late but had triggered. They got to Sylvia first because she looked worse. A fold-out stretcher, vitals check, a rescuer speaking calmly and efficiently, while she kept turning to look at me over his shoulder, like she needed me to still be in the frame. "I'm right here," I said. "I know," she said. They separated us to load us into the aircraft. Sylvia reached back for my hand as they guided her forward. A rescuer gently moved it to help her board. That was the first time since the crash that the world took her somewhere I couldn't follow. After that, things moved with a speed that felt wrong after days of slow and careful. Fort Nelson Hospital, clean sheets, lights. Questions from doctors, a Mountie. 2 people from Transport Canada who asked the same questions differently. I had a fractured kneecap, a deep laceration on my forearm that needed stitches, dehydration, and bruising across my back they found on the x-ray. I was told I was incredibly lucky. I was told to rest. I was also told by someone from the company's HR office, who arrived faster than seemed reasonable, that my professionalism during this difficult event was noted and appreciated. That word, professionalism. I asked about Sylvia the first day. The nurse said stable, which was a word and also not an answer. I asked to see her. Visitors were being managed by her medical team. The second morning, I asked again. Her recovery required minimal outside contact. Third day, her office is coordinating her communications. Fourth day, a different person. Operations, I think, some senior title, told me the company was committed to supporting all staff involved in the incident, and that private recovery time was being prioritized for everyone. Private. I was discharged on day 5 into a furnished company apartment in Fort St. John. Temporary, they said, comfortable. A car service had dropped a fruit basket on the kitchen counter, a card signed by 14 people I'd shared a building with for nearly a year without once being invited to their birthday drinks, and a large white envelope from the legal team. Inside, a separation agreement, transition package, extended benefits, non-disclosure clause covering any events related to the incident, the aircraft, and any interactions with company personnel in a non-professional context. A request to route all future communication through official channels in the interest of everyone's well-being. I sat there with my hospital bracelet still on and read it twice. Then I laughed. One short, genuine laugh, because it was so smooth. So thorough. They weren't firing me. They were dissolving me carefully, politely, with fruit and legal language and the particular Canadian brand of corporate gentleness that manages to be completely brutal while remaining entirely civil. I tried calling her. Nothing. The number I'd used for 9 months to coordinate her entire travel schedule went straight to a generic voicemail I'd never heard before. I sent a message. No response. I emailed the private address I'd used when her inbox was locked for board prep. The next morning, I got a response from a legal inbox explaining that direct communication was being handled through official channels, given the sensitivity of the situation. Official channels. Sensitivity. I saved those 2 phrases because they were doing a lot of work. Story made the news, stripped down and polished. Regional executive and staff member survive remote aircraft emergency. Remarkable ordeal in Northern BC company, praises young coordinator's calm response. Photos of the wreck from the air. A quote from the firm's CEO about safety protocol review. Nothing about the nights. Nothing about her hand in mine under the granite shelf. Nothing about the way she'd looked at me when I came back with water. Like I'd just confirmed something she'd been afraid to believe. I stopped reading. A board representative called me 10 days after discharge. Warm voice, prepared language. He said the company was grateful for everything I had done for Miss Marsh during what he called the ordeal. He said survival events created strong emotional responses that could feel significant but benefited from stabilization time. He said the company wanted to ensure I had space to recover fully before making any major decisions. Space. That was their word for distance. I let him finish. Then I said, "Is she asking me not to contact her? Or are you?" A pause. "We are all working toward Miss Marsh's best outcome." "You. That's not what I asked." Another pause, longer. "Given the circumstances, direct contact would not be appropriate at this time." I thanked him for calling and hung up. I didn't sign the separation agreement. I packed my bag, left the apartment, and drove 3 hours south to a small rental in a town called Cache Creek, where a friend of a friend had a spare room going month to month. Quiet. The kind of quiet where you notice the absence of things. Some mornings I woke up and it took a second to remember I wasn't under the overhang with the sound of the creek somewhere below and Sylvia's weight against my shoulder. That was harder than the crash, in ways I hadn't expected. I told myself she would find a way to reach me if she wanted to. I also told myself that maybe the board had gotten there first. Rebuilt the frame around her fast enough that what happened out there started to feel, from inside her office and her recovered schedule and her reclaimed version of herself, like something from another life. I didn't know. I couldn't know. And not knowing was its own particular kind of cold. I was 2.5 weeks into the silence, making coffee on a gray Thursday afternoon, when someone knocked on the door. I opened it. Sylvia. No driver. No company SUV. A dark coat, hair down, standing on my doorstep in a town she had no reason to know I was in. Her face was tired. The cut near her hairline had closed into a thin scar. Her hands, I noticed, were not entirely steady. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I said, "How did you find me?" "You managed my schedule for 9 months," she said. "You think I can't track down one forwarding address?" Her voice was steady. Her hands weren't. I stepped back and let her in. She walked into the small front room slowly, taking it in. The rental was basic. 2 chairs, a table, a window that looked out on a ridge of dry ponderosa pine. She looked around like the modesty of it confirmed something she'd already decided. Then she turned to me. "They screened my calls," she said. "Not literally. Officially, my schedule was rebuilt. Every person around me suddenly had a reason I needed to be somewhere else, talking to someone else, focused on something with a deadline." She stopped. "One of them actually used the words trauma bonding to explain why I shouldn't trust my own judgment." I stayed where I was. And I listened for longer than I should have. Her eyes stayed level on mine. I told myself I was being rational, that I was protecting something that mattered. My position, the company's stability, the 10 years I put into building a reputation in a field that doesn't give women many chances to rebuild one. It took a step closer. And then I realized the only thing they were actually protecting was the version of me that existed before that plane went down. The room was very quiet. "Sylvia," I said, carefully, "if you're here because you feel like you owe me something." "Don't," she said, flat and final. I stopped. She came the rest of the way across the room. Close enough that I could see the strain of the last few weeks in her face, the sleeplessness, the effort it had cost her to get here. "When I thought you weren't coming back," she said, "out there by that creek, that was the clearest I have ever been about anything." She swallowed. "And when they kept me from you after, that was the second clearest." I didn't move. "I am done letting other people define what my actual life is," she said. She reached for me. I caught her hand, pulled her in, and when she kissed me this time there was no storm, and no fear, and no darkness pressing in from all sides. Just her, in a small room in Cache Creek, choosing to be here. When we pulled apart, she leaned her forehead against mine and let out a long breath. The kind you hold for weeks without realizing it. "They're going to have opinions about this," I said. "I know. You could lose a lot." "I know." He looked at her. "And you still drove 3 hours." She gave the smallest nod. "I came to stay if you'll let me." That was it. No strategy, no managed language, just Sylvia, in a borrowed town, choosing me with the same certainty she used to bring into boardrooms, except this time it had nothing to do with anything she was trying to protect. So I said yes. I've thought a lot about what actually saved us out there. Not the creek I found, not the rock shelf, not the emergency kit with its 4 ibuprofen and its square of foil sheeting. What saved us was simpler and harder than any of that. It was the decision, made over and over again in small moments, to be honest about what was real. Sylvia spent 15 years being the most prepared person in every room. That's not nothing. That's a kind of intelligence that most people never build. The ability to read a situation fast, cut to what matters, and move before others have finished processing. I watched her do it for 9 months and I genuinely respected it. But intelligence, on its own, doesn't tell you what to do when the room disappears. When there's no deck to review, no car waiting, no structure holding the day together. That's when something else has to take over. What took over for her eventually was honesty. The moment she stopped managing her own fear and just said, "I hate needing someone," that was the moment she became someone I could actually work with. Not just follow. Work with. There's a difference, and it matters more than most organizational charts will ever admit. For my part, I had to figure out what I actually stood for when the professional context was gone. In the office, I was good at my job because I was good at reading what other people needed and delivering it. That's useful. It's also a way of never quite being yourself. Out there, I didn't have the luxury of that. I had to make calls, disagree out loud, tell her to leave the case and move. Not because I'd stopped respecting her, but because I respected her enough to be straight with her when it counted. That's the thing about integrity. It's not something you can perform when it's convenient and set aside when it's costly. It's only real if it holds up when something is on the line. A signed NDA would have been easier. The separation package was generous. Staying quiet would have protected a version of my career, but it would have cost me the thing I'd learned out there, that I was capable of being someone worth coming back to. And she came back. Drove 3 hours without calling ahead, showed up at a door in a town she had no reason to know, with unsteady hands and every reason not to be there. That took more courage than anything I saw in 9 months of watching her run a division, because it was chosen. Not required by circumstance, not forced by a storm or a crash or a dwindling water supply, just chosen, plainly, in the middle of an ordinary gray afternoon. I think that's what I carry from all of it. Not the survival details. Not the wilderness competence I didn't actually have and mostly improvised. Just this, that the best version of any person shows up when the structure falls away. And when it does, what's left is either something real or it isn't. There's no middle ground out there. There wasn't for us. We got lucky. But I also think we earned it. By not pretending, when pretending would have been so much easier.